There was a comment someone made that really got into my head, which was, I don't know if he knows how to brew the same beer again. Maybe he just has to change it up the whole time because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Challenge
so I was like,
accepted.
challenge accepted. I can't deal with that.
Jack, hi. Thanks for having us down here at your amazing little tap room and brewery in rural Hertfordshire. It's a cracking little place.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, man.
Making
Cheers.
the journey.
So,
Baron.
then, what's all that about then, Jack? So, tell us a little bit about how you started, your background.
I started brewing. I've been in brewing for about 10 years. When I was 19, I went up to Edinburgh to study the brewing and distilling degree for 4 years and lived with other brewers, and we all sort of lived the beery life. And
So you're educated in this. This wasn't just a hobby gone good. This was something that you focused on from an educational point of view.
Yeah. I started with education before a hobby because at 19, I really just took a punt on it. I'd done sort of science and art at school. I didn't really know how I was going to use that in real life. And I wasn't planning on going to university, but then everyone else was doing that. And then my dad said, why don't you try and find a course that's a bit off the normal route? And he found that you could do a brewing and distilling degree in Edinburgh, and I thought that sounded brilliant. So I applied straight away, and the course, that was in sort of mid-August, and the course started 3 weeks later, and I just got the last place on the course, completely by chance. It was just before the big craft beer sort of crazy boom. It was 2013. Yeah, there were only 15 people on the course, and went on for 4 years. It was a bachelor's of science, so it's just biology and chemistry. It sounds like it's fun, like, oh, studying brewing. It was voted the second stupidest degree you could do after the Harry Potter degree.
Or there's a degree in America on Keanu Reeves studies.
Wow. And we came even stupider than those.
So there was no brewing or background of brewing in your family? It was just kind of like...
No, nothing at all. I just thought it sounded like fun. It really was that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a deep appreciation of beer at the time because I was only 19, and I drank beer with my friends, but it just sounded like fun. And I actually, for the first few years on the course, I was getting way more into whiskey than I was beer.
Edinburgh,
yeah. And it was whiskey and beer, like that was what the course was sort of geared towards, and it was brilliant. And yeah, I was thinking at the time I'd go into whiskey, but it's just such a slow process making whiskey. So actually, and then I worked part-time in breweries while I was studying, and then graduated in 2017 and got a job down here in Hertford in a local brewery, which is all real traditional cask mostly. They do a little bit of other stuff, but so I have a sort of pedigree of traditional brewing. Much more cask than the craft stuff. I've never worked in a proper...
Who was the brewery down here?
It's called Macmillan's in Hertford.
I don't know Macmillan.
No, they only really sell... They have a big pub estate locally. They have 140 odd pubs, and they pretty much only sell beer that they make to their pubs. So they do a tiny amount of other stuff, but it's like 99% of the beer goes straight to the pub. So unless you know a Macmillan pub, you won't know the brewery. Yeah. And they have a different reputation to, the sort of brewery that I wanted. It's a different thing. It was a very good job and a really lovely place to work. And I was there for three and a bit years, but it was never what I really wanted to do forever. And they have 190 years of heritage and tradition and
a way of doing things.
It was just different. It's trying to brew these styles of beers just doesn't work when you've got that sort of inertia.
For yourself then, obviously, you were doing your education and kind of learning brewing at the time when craft beer was kind of picking up pace and becoming a thing. 2020, I'd say, was the time when it kind of exploded because there was a lot of, I think during furlough, there was just a lot of hobbyist brewers that were just deciding to start their own thing. Baron came about just after that, if I'm right. So you sort of like tail end of lockdown, really, weren't you? Like 2021.
Yeah, I started building the barn in January of 2021. So it took, about 10 months to build the shed. And I'm not a builder, so I had to learn on the job. Was trading by, late 21. So yeah, just been nearly going 2 years. Not quite.
Yeah.
If it's any consolation, though, it actually took me longer than 10 months to put my garden shed up. So, you know, I think you've done pretty well there. So, your speciality, what you're most known for is the bitter and hoppy side of beer. I know we sort of drawn to you, for your pales and IPAs in particular, which are absolutely sensational. Drinking one of your core ones here, which is Fuzz, I believe.
Yes.
Which is an absolute banger of a beer.
Let's look at that.
It haze all day.
Yeah, lots of haze. I was very reluctant. At the beginning of doing this, I was very reluctant to do anything that was repeating. And I was
going to ask that. So I guess the point was going to be, is this by design, or you just fell into this?
Well, I'd done over a year of just special one-off releases, and momentum was picking up pretty. It took months to sell the first few beers, and then by the year mark, I was having to have a special out every 5 days, and it sort of. I was worried at sort of watering down the specialness of the specials. So I thought if I did a core pale, at least there'd be some sort of consistency. And there was a comment someone made that really got into my head, which was, I don't know if he knows how to brew the same beer again. Maybe he just has to change it up the whole time because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. I can't deal with that. So I thought I'll carry on brewing fast. But funnily, I don't actually brew it identically each time. I adapt. It constantly evolves. So this brew of it is quite wheat heavy, and the brew that I'm packaging tomorrow in 2 days is really oat heavy. So it sort of always slightly changes depending on what I fancy. And also, I can't get anywhere with any pubs because I don't do anything regular that they can buy the next week. So I thought having Fuzz available would at least, it would sort of satisfy that part of the market a bit. It doesn't really. It's still too expensive, and for locally, it's still too expensive and too weird. But it's nice to have something that people know.
But your reach is far exceeding your locality, really. So I mentioned to you before this that we used to sell a lot of your stuff in our tap room. And in fact, one of your beers, which is Hotcakes, was voted by customers to be one of the best beers we had on.
That was a dipper, wasn't it?
That was
it was a dipper, yeah.
Nelson Heavy Dipper.
It sold like.
What's the word?
It'll come to me.
Yeah.
But so your biggest strength beers are certainly hitting the right spot, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's hard to know It's hard to get enough feedback, like massive, broad amounts of feedback on Untapped, but it's hard to get enough specific of feedback. But talking to the people who run tap rooms and bottle shops, I think they generally say my strong stuff is where it is like at its best compared to the market. But I don't know. I think recently, in the last 2 or 3 months, the beers have stepped up another step with being able to tune my water in better and sort of going real back to basics.
So always learning.
Yeah, for sure. I was always wanted to use, so I've got a reverse osmosis water thing, which is just means you can strip it. We've got very hard water down here. Strip out everything and build the profile back for the specific beer. And instead of having to wrestle with the water to get it nice and fluffy and light for these beers, I can actually build it up as I want.
Wow.
And it has changed. I think the beers have changed for the better recently. It means a lot more work because it takes days to fill the tank with the water, and I'm always, worried about the pump blowing up overnight and stuff. But the bigger beers is I think I like showing off with the big beers because it's the most intense flavour experience.
Yeah, I'd say that definitely you were someone that kind of came out onto the scene and kind of made a big splash really in the whirlpool, so to speak, because
that's crazy. That's a crazy experience.
It kind of just came out of nowhere. Everyone was sort of saying, "Oh, have you tried Baron yet? Have you tried Baron yet?" And obviously we went down to Verdant in November last year, and they were singing your praises. Billy, for our Bruiser kind of thing, that we did like a feature with Bruiser where they were going through,
Yes.
Verdant were going through someone else's Bruiser box to kind of taste it, and
Yeah.
he picked you. So yeah, you've obviously got you're very highly regarded on the scene, which is great. And you're still just a one-man outfit?
Yeah, I don't do the artwork. That's
I was going to come
done-
on to the artwork because that's one of our kind of little niches
Yeah.
on the channel. We really like exploring beer names and the artwork.
Yeah, it's great because I don't have much of a say in the artwork. I mean, I'd choose what gets on the can, but no, apart from the artwork and yeah, that's it really. The wholesale, I sell about 40% of the beer to a wholesaler called Distant Lands, who are in Newmarket, who aren't very far away, and they distribute it across the UK. I deal directly with all the local, so from like about 30-mile radius from here, I deal with all the accounts locally.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot, but it's a really fun job. I really like it.
Yeah.
I like it all.
Circling back to something you were saying earlier, actually, so we're drinking fuzz, and you said that obviously no batch of this is the same.
Yeah.
It's your core, it's your regular, but no batch is the same. That's quite interesting because craft beer is full of that culture of try it and move on. You know, that Untapped is very much promoting that kind of, once you've had it,
Yeah.
that's it. It's checked off. Pokemon. It's gone. Don't try it again. But that's quite interesting because if people just think, well, I've had fuzz before, they could potentially be missing out on an evolution of that.
Yeah.
It could taste, and I think I've said this with some of the other young breweries that we've tried, like Copper Beach. You know, their beer that they started out brewing, you know, when they first started, 2 years later, it's a completely different beer,
yeah.
and it's better for it. So I don't know. Maybe there's something there for people to ponder on with their
Yeah, I
drinking
think you've
habits.
got to. Yeah. It's really funny trying to explain that to someone who's not a check it and move on, drink it. Because a lot of people come here and they're staggered that I really enjoy that beer and I can't get it again. What's going on? This is insane. But I have to try and explain to them how it works now. But with fuzz, it's really nice because I sell it to some of the local tap rooms, buy it every time. And they're like, oh, this batch is so much nicer. Or like, so, I really like how it tastes this time. Or, and I try and I deliver to them so I can chat for 20 minutes to all of the people who run them because I learn so much from that feedback. Whether it be something small like, oh, it was a bit over carbs, or this batch was, didn't feel as well rounded or whatever. It's just really nice.
I always find that it's the one-off beers or the annual beers, which breweries do, when they always tweak the recipe a little bit and then they re-release something. I can never remember what it tasted like the first time. I'm sure I can look back on Untapped and go, oh, well, I enjoyed it, but I have no memory whether it tastes remarkably different or not, just that I enjoy it more or less. So I think if you're having the regular beer constantly as a tap room, and you can literally from one glass to the next taste the difference, I mean, that's going to be a good talking point, right?
I think so.
And the feedback's going to be invaluable to you.
Yeah, and I hope it keeps people interested.
So obviously you started off, you went to university 19, didn't really know much about beer, you just knew you wanted to get into it. Obviously you were probably drinking some macro sort of stuff at the time, you were getting into whiskey, but what then were the breweries or the beers that brought you to where we are now? Why didn't you get a job at Carlsberg?
Yeah, but most people do get snapped up for the big companies. But probably there's a little brewery in Ellen called Brewdog, and we had a few of those.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. What happened to those?
I don't know what's
Yeah,
happened to them.
yeah.
But I remember having a punk IPA, probably when I was in the second year at university or something. So that'd be 2014, and thinking, wow, this is a really nice beer.
Absolute game changer.
It was great. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I could talk about this all day about whether it's the same as it used to be, you know. But at the time, that was a different drink to anything I'd had. And then my last year at university, I remember there was a eureka moment with a Cloudwater beer, and I got a can because I looked at it, thought that looks fantastic. Love the branding, it looks so fancy and smart. And cracked it open, and I was living with other people. I was at my girlfriend's house, and her friends who are normal, non-beery people.
Normal.
Normal people. And they were, try this. And they're like, oh yeah. And for me, my head was, this is the best, this is what I want to make. This is all that I can think about now.
Yeah.
And it was just, a perfect example of a fluffy, hop forward.
I think I had the similar experience with early Cloudwater. I think that was the flick switch for me when I tried that, and also the branding of Cloudwater. They came out of nowhere really fast. And then suddenly they were doing those IPA and Dipper series.
So much of craft beer, it kind of starts out with just someone wanting to replicate a beer that they're just really into and can't get enough of.
Yeah.
You know, we've had it in all the kind of conversations that we've had with brewers. They're just like, well, it was just a beer that I really liked. It's a type of beer, wasn't very common, so I thought I'm just going to try and brew it myself.
No one's starting from scratch. Everyone is taking something that's great and trying to do their own spin on it.
Yeah.
Because, there aren't very many places to go. We're all trying to make nice things, but pretty much every base has been covered. And with these hoppy beers, at the time, again, it's hard to know because my taste buds or the quality of beers 6, 7, 8 years ago might be so different to who they are now. And now we're so lucky because you get amazing beer everywhere you go. But no, I remember those moments and being like, this is just, I want to be able to do this. I want to be able to make something that tastes this nice. And with the hazy hoppy stuff, it's such a, you don't have to try very hard to like it. Even if you're not a beer fan, it's a naturally lovely flavour for most people.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think we've converted quite a few people who are, ardent traditionalists.
Yeah.
For example, like my dad was being converted by the likes of Nothing Bound, and no doubt he's drank yours in my tap room as well in the past. But I think you've nailed.
That's giving me serious Nothing Bound vibes. That's
very. I think the similarities between you and Nothing Bound are multiple, really. You know,
Let's come up and have a
man.
cave.
Come on up.
I think you're kindred spirits, really, and you both sort of set back in the middle of nowhere, doing your own thing. One-man band operations are absolutely killing the hazy boy.
What are you drinking actually? Because you're not drinking the same.
No. I'm drinking the lager, gluten-free lager that I've currently got on.
Interesting.
I do quite like doing some. I'd probably say 70% of the beers I make are hazy and hoppy, but I really like doing lagers because it's a real test. It's so hard to do decent lager. So I have full respect for like Utopia and people who absolutely nail good lager.
I guess when you crack the lager code, you've ticked off the I'm a great brewer.
It's the hardest thing. It's just because you've got. It's just so cliche. Everyone said everything about them, but it's just hard to do because you've got nothing to hide behind. And it's true. You're trying to create the perfect, crisp, easy drinking thing, and any tiny cock up along the way will just show up so easily in the beer.
I've noticed you've got an Impy Stout on at the moment.
Yeah.
How you find it in the world of big dark beers?
There's so much to learn with it. That's the first one I've ever brewed, Impy Stout.
I don't remember you doing an Impy Stout. So I'm intrigued to try that. Yeah.
It was hard. I've recently bought a new tiny tank to do more strong stuff.
Good timing.
Yeah. It needs a cool name.
Well, we've got
on to that.
Yeah.
We'll get you a name before the end of this session.
But it's great, and it's nice to be. I'm sort of thinking of it as a commercially unviable tank. So a tank for making beers that people don't really want to. A reputation building tank rather than something that you can make lots of beer from. Just make an IPA and stick 50 grams a litre of hops in it and see what happens. Brewing purely for the sake of experimentation.
Yeah.
And at the moment it's got an Impy in it. And yeah, I've been trying to steal people's ideas, which is what brewing is. Asking all the people who make really good imperial stouts how they do it. So incredibly thick mash, incredibly long mash, long boil, a 6-hour boil on that instead of a normal boil, which is normally about an hour and a half.
Would you still treat your water? Because obviously stouts and porters are good with hard water, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
So
I still did.
Still?
I probably didn't need to, but I still stripped it back and then built it back. I built it back to a very similar profile to my original. So I did
Got to
feel.
give yourself something to do.
I
You
felt so
haven't got enough to
stupid.
do here, that's a problem. So, yeah, got to keep yourself busy.
Exactly. And it's all probably completely pointless because you're hiding it with so much stuff. And I chucked so much chocolate in it. Like, the beer is mostly chocolate sauce. No, it's not no sauce, but it's all nibs and
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
it looks like a chocolate treacle. So yeah, that'd be interesting. But I'm just sort of trying. I've had a few nerd beers recently and be like, that's
they're
like
good.
peak
Yeah.
crazy beer.
That's
and
Swedish, nerd.
yeah, and Malmo I think they're from.
Yeah,
Sweden.
Swedish.
And they
Get
just
them over.
Yeah. If I can, nerd. But yeah, that sort of thing would be interesting to make. I'm not going to sell very much of it because I think probably people are here to buy the hazy stuff in general, but it's just fun to try.
But I suppose you're in a position where, because I mean, you've got, I'm assuming that behind you is a little micro canning line thing.
Yeah.
So at least I suppose you're in a position where even if the stuff that you've just made isn't necessarily going to sell to your locals, you can can it, and especially with something like an impy stout,
Yeah.
long shelf life, you can just push that out.
Well, I was very keen to start the brewery with a canning machine because it's massively lavish to come out of nowhere with a canning machine. But I really wanted the funding to get a canning machine. So because early days, if you start, everyone can make. Well, most people can make decent beer. It's being able to package it and get it to the places that need it or want it straight away. And people aren't necessarily going to take a keg off you straight away. But so I didn't do any keg when I started. It was all can for the first 6 months. Canned and sold to as many places in the UK as I could, just to try and get some exposure, and definitely helped. But yeah, it's an expensive bit of kit, but it's brilliant. Yeah. It's the smallest canning machine that Micro can do, 2-head filler, but it's got all the components of the bigger ones that all the bigger breweries have. So I think most of the canning machines in the UK are probably from Micro Can now. I don't know, from the little breweries anyway.
Regarding the rest of your kit, obviously we'll go and have a quick tour of it in a bit. You say you've got 5 tanks, each one of those filled with different beer?
Yeah, I've had 4 until just last month.
Yeah.
That little one's brand new, but yeah, so it's a sort of straightforward cold liquor tank, which is filled with RO water, then a hot liquor tank, mash tun, work kettle. So just a very straightforward 4-tank brew house. And then, 4 11 hectolitre tanks, and then 1 5.5 hectolitre tank. It's about all I can cope with on my own. I couldn't make much more beer than that on my own, and then sell it on my own.
No, sure.
So it's there's a lot of planning in that year leading up to production. There's a lot of planning on and chatting to people and seeing what makes sense. I built the barn specifically to be this big, so I had it all laid out in my head and did lots of drawings and wanted it to be like this. I never really planned on doing taproom stuff. This was all a bit of an extra bonus.
Yeah.
But as the location is so crazily, it's not built for a taproom really.
No,
so
but
middle of
I
nowhere.
think people will travel for good beer. I mean,
Yeah.
Obviously we're here, and I'm sure you get a fair few travellers coming in from, the nearby towns and cities and stuff. Regarding the future for you then, so kind of to close it, what's next?
I think probably, keep pushing quality, and I'm quite glad I'm not a bigger brewery competing in across the UK just on volume, because it's a small enough amount of beer that hopefully there's enough demand across the UK in a relatively happy position. But yeah, I don't fancy getting too crazy big, and it would just be carrying on like this for a while. We're in a pretty tough time, I think.
Yeah.
And expanding at the moment would be a big, bold move.
But as you say, you seem happy. You're not in any kind of financial demand to suddenly expand as quickly as you can. And yeah, it just seems like you're in a bit of a sweet spot at the moment.
Yeah, I've got some things that have been a help, like having a location to do it,
Of course,
which
yeah.
has been a massive leg up. Because I was living in London before this, and just asked my dad runs this farm, and I just said, have you got anywhere I can have to make a brewery? Which I understand is quite a luxurious position to be in, because renting somewhere at $2,000 a month for a year before you even made any
Yeah,
beer.
exactly. Yeah.
And then every month on that, and then paying a group of staff to run the shop.
But I mean, that comes with its own kind of challenges in the sense of, you know, a brewery or a microbrewery that decide to go and hire out a unit on an industrial estate. They've soloed out that location, picked it for an audience. They've done a business plan on that. You don't have that luxury necessarily. Although, yeah, absolutely, you've got the luxury to build your own brewery and tap room. You don't get to choose the location of it. It's kind of like you kind of just got to roll with it. And
Yeah, that's true. And I would not have chosen this if it were the only. If I had options, I would have chosen somewhere else for sure. I think I would probably have moved into a local town, like any normal person, if they were. But it wasn't an option at the time. And I've really hated buying things over like a period of time.
Yeah.
I don't do the payment scheme thing. If I can afford to buy something, I'll buy it, and then if I can't afford it, I might buy it. So with this, I had to get quite a lot of money to start up, because the worst thing about starting a brewery is you've got to fork out all the money before you've made any beer. But it's all paid off now, so it's actually a quite happy position, because the overheads are now quite small after the kit's quite recently been paid off, and it should be plain sailing, assuming they can still make and sell nice beer.
That's a really great place to be. So yeah, wish you all the best for that. So we typically like to ask people we interview a few standard questions. If you could collaborate with any brewery that you haven't already collaborated with, because I know you've done a lot of collaborations, who would it be?
Oh my God, that's so hard. Can't think of any breweries now. I'd really like to collaborate with a big black beer maker, like a Nerd or an Omnipollo or something. That'd be quite cool.
that would be cool.
Yeah,
Favourite country for beer?
Oh, wow, I don't know. That's very hard. UK. Oh, represent. We do some pretty good beer. We do quite a broad range of great beer. America's going to be the most typical answer for the hazy.
Generally, America always falls.
Or Belgium.
New question. What's your favourite hop?
Oh, that's the hardest question.
If I said to you, you've got to brew a single hop IPA.
That's different.
Single hop IPA.
You could play it very safe, but my favourite hop, which everyone hates, is I really like Talus. Everyone hates that, but I would never use it as a single hop. It would be revolting.
Yeah.
I think in small amounts it's great, and a lot of other brewers take the piss out of me because I use Talus too much. But I really like Talus. I think it gives a lovely grapefruity thing going on. And some people think it tastes really perfumey and sage-like, and I don't get that at all. I get sort of pithy orange. But if I were making a single hop IPA, Nelson's pretty nice. That's got to come up quite a lot as an answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first time we've asked that question, but I think it might be a staple from
Sabro, I mean, and Sriracha Ace. That's what I'm going to take. Sriracha Ace.
Yeah, okay.
Nice.
That's dreadful. No.
I have got one last question, and I think it's probably the most important one. Who's your favourite member of the Wu-Tang Clan?
Old dirty bastard.
Oh, standard, really.